Welcome everyone to Friday Live at 5. Something a little different this week. Typically, I work on a dry sheet of paper. And someone asked last week, and I'm familiar with the idea that a lot of people will dampen the sheet or soak it or, in other words, have a moist sheet of paper that they work into. And so I thought, well, let's talk about why that might be done. What are the advantages? What would you want to avoid? And try to learn it. So I wanted to take as our subject the same cloister from St. Paul de Mazolle in Saint-Rémy, where Van Gogh convalesced, but down at ground level, walking around there. So, hi, Michael. So, why you might do this? What happened? I'm going to try and draw a picture here and hopefully illustrate what's going on when you do that. You may have heard me talk about the issue of paint consistency and paper condition and knowing what happens. So I want you to imagine that you're looking at a piece of paper edge on like this. Here's our piece of paper. There are basically two consistencies of paint. Runny paint, which is more water than paint. Slow-moving paint, which is more paint than water. Now, there are basically three conditions of the paper. Other people cut it up into more, but functionally, there's really only three. There's the first one, the dry sheet of paper. The second situation is when the sheet of paper, you have applied paint to it, either runny or slow-moving, whatever. There's moisture on the surface. This is the universal symbol for water, ha, ha, ha. The pigment particles are in that water and mobile. They're moving around. But almost immediately, I mean, it's literally immediately, some of that water soaks below the surface or into the paper. So this is the second condition of the paper. The third functional condition of the paper is when, and you will notice this when you look at your paper and you see the glisten go off of it. The water has now soaked below the surface, and the pigment is sitting on top, but it's not yet dry, okay? And then we're back to, when it dries, we're back to situation number one. So there are the three situations and the three conditions of the paper, and explain the two consistencies of paint. And when I paint, I'm going to try to remember to tell you what consistency of paint I'm using. Now, I will flat out tell you that this is not the way I usually work, but I'm trying to learn it. I think it's great. I've actually gotten a really nice effect. I did a run through of it, and I quite like this because there's things happening here that really appeal to me. So when would you use this? Well, what happens when you paint into this condition where the paper is moist underneath? When you paint on top, you then immediately convert it back to, if you moisten the paper, you're basically recreating situation number three. The second you put paint on there, you've moved it back to situation number two. But to keep it from just blurring out, you want to use a denser consistency of paint. So when you start here, you want the paint to be not runny like I usually do in the first stage. You want it to be more of the slower moving paint because there's already some water here. and it's damp, and you don't want to disturb, well, hopefully we'll see. Now, like I say, I don't normally do this, so as I do it, I probably will make some mistakes, but I'm thinking, well, okay, then you can see what the problems might be. And then I'll try to explain why the problem happened and how you might remedy it. So the first thing I would suggest with this type of approach is that you draw on your dry paper first. Get your drawing done before you moisten the sheet, because if you've ever tried to draw on wet paper with a pencil, it's a mess. So I'm going to look here for my key verticals and my key horizontals. So this is a little bit to the right of halfway. There's a bit of a dive from the roof line there. I'm going to show a little bit more roof line because I'm thinking the tape will come to about there. So there's just a little bit of that. Let's get it straight. The little herb garden here with the cloister is about there. I'm very lightly drawing this. I need to find that. It's the halfway would be about here, so it's below half. I'm going to leave out this dead potted thing, but I might put in this little bit of herbage here. Looks like tarragon. So there's some archways here, but the key thing is it doesn't pay to do a lot of complicated drawing, because the edges are going to be very soft and blurry in this situation. So I'm going to find that central post here and then do my two arches. That's about as much drawing I'm going to do for now. Now, let's talk about what are the situations where we might do this. One might be something like this lovely Adirondack, New York scene from my brother-in-law's property. You have a nice, lovely merging soft edges of the colors in there. When we do this thing where we put slower moving paint into a moist surface, we're going to get a soft edge. So what this lets us do, it lets us establish those medium values or medium to dark values with soft edges. If you want a hard edge, then you're going to have to put that in later. This is a dark over a lighter color, so I could put that in. I could put this in, let it be very soft. I could put this in. I'd try to mix that pond. But then when I need to go to my darks, I would let the paper get a little drier, and then I would put those in. So here's a situation where everything is very soft. So you could put this stuff in and then let the paper dry a bit to put the more specific shapes. Here, this would be another good candidate, this Rome thing. I could put in a lot of warm ochre and orange colors here, some cool darks in here, and it would look like just kind of a blur, but then as that got a little drier, then I could make these more specific, very crisp shapes, the figures, the bits of architecture like that. Here's a situation where it might start to get a little harder because you want to preserve these very specific lights. So this is kind of pushing it. I mean, you could put in these greens and some of these grayer colors, and that blue, you might put in a lighter blue and then the darker blue here, and you get a very soft edge. But this is pushing the limits because you do need these lighter shapes in here. Here's a situation where it would not be a good candidate for using this because you need a very crisp edge with these light shapes against that dark shape. So it might work good over here, but boy, you're going to get into trouble over there. You might do a half and half or a hybrid kind of a thing. Here's a situation. You need to paint around that white shape of that awning there, and boy, if the paper is moist, it'd be lovely to do it back here. It'd be great for doing it there. It'd be great for doing it in here, but there, that's not a place you'd want to do that. Here's a picture by Alvaro Castañet, and you can see where it might be good for a nocturne, where these edges would be very soft, somewhat specific. He's gone in with gouache later to get those very specific shapes like that. Here too on the street lights, and the tops of the people's heads. But you could use it for something like that. So, back to our subject, and we're going to paint now. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing you have to do, and remember, I'm at a 45, if you could see it from the side, the table is at about an angle like that. I'm getting clear water, and I'm going to moisten the back side of the sheet. This is 140-pound cold press Stonehenge. So I'm moistening the back of the sheet, sticking it here. Let's put it where we can all see it. There we go. And it will stick to the paper. So you'll want to not put it on something that's like a porous surface. This piece of wood I've got it on is shellacked. So I'm wetting the front on top of the drawing because it's impossible to draw on wet paper. So now the sheet is adhering all by itself. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some paper towels. Now there's a lot of painters who do this. Andy Evenson, Matthew White, the California painters of the 50s and 60s, and maybe the king of it is Trevor Chamberlain from England. Now I'm going to take the paper towel roll and I'm going to get the excess moisture off the front. So what I'm doing is I'm essentially creating stage 3 in that. Now, I got to tape it down. Even though it's wet, you can still tape it. Now I'm taping to the edge and past it. So you can see my typical routine of taping to the edge rather than across the edge. I can do this, and even if the paper is wet, it's going to be held at the 4 corners. So I'm nervous as I can be. We don't know what's going to happen, right? Another painter that works this way, Michael Soloviev, a Russian painter living in Montreal. Okay, now, like I said, there's water in that paper underneath the surface. I need to paint with not the runny washes that I would typically use. I'm going to need to do something that will be a stiffer consistency of paint, meaning slower moving, more pigment, less water. Over here it's very light. Down over there it's very light. I'm going to get a little bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit of neutral tint. That looks too dark, so I will get some water. I'm going to take it to there. Yes, it will dry lighter, don't worry. Very light down here. These ochre colors and those ochre colors, I see these as warmer, these as cooler. I'm going to take some of this stuff. A mix that I'm become very fond of is Holbein Lavender in my siennas. Oh, that's too much of it. More sienna over here. More of my lavender. And it's a holy mess until you, like I say, it's all soft edges. Put that down there. Now, yellow green in here. So I have to go with the brighter colors. The lighter, there will be darker greens going in here. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue into that. Ultramarine. And, boy, I tell you, that looked like tarragon. It was definitely an herb garden. And tarragon is wonderful with fish. Now up here too, I've got to get some straight up yellow and pull it in over here. And you see how the edges are getting very soft. Now I'm going to put the blue into it, and this is slower moving paint. See, it doesn't, when I tip it, it doesn't, let's get in here too. Now remember, if you've just painted someplace, first of all, there's water underneath the surface of this paper. And second of all, if you just painted there, you've brought more water to the situation. So anything you do, you either have to wait or you have to bring a stiffer mix of paint to it. So I'm rinsing the brush, blotting it off because I don't want to bring any extra pigment to. I'm going to get some, let's get some ultramarine or some cobalt, maybe some cerulean, doesn't matter, sky blue, and I'm going to pull it in there. Cerulean, let's just get cerulean right in there. I need it to be stronger than I might think I'd like. Okay. In here, I see a lot of warm sienna colors. So I'm actually going to go into Cad Orange. It's wet. I just painted there, so I have to come up with stiffer paint. Cad Orange, burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. Slow moving. Whereabouts? Looks strong, I know. Some in there too. We'll see what we get. A little bit in here. A little bit in here. Now I see how it spreads out. I'm probably going to, well, I need to also have some, blot the brush, get the excess water. That's another thing I have to do. You have to blot your brush to get the excess water off. And I guarantee it's going to look like a mess for a while. I'm going to mix some ultramarine blue with the burnt sienna. Hope I got enough burnt sienna on here. Doggone it. Let's get a little bit of the lavender as well. I'm going to do the arch in here. Probably looks darker than what you think it ought to be. I hope it's not. Okay, let's make it warmer with some more burnt sienna. Pull along that roof line. get in here. Edges are very soft. It's darker up in there too, isn't it? If it looks dark, figure out where is it, how big is it, what shape is it. Hi, Becky. So wish me luck here. This is not my usual bag, but I'm liking it, and I'm going to keep at it till I figure it out. So I'm blotting the brush. I'm going to get a little bit more of the ultramarine blue. See, these are slow moving. When I tilt this, see how it doesn't run? It's not a puddle. That's the important thing. This needs to be the slower moving paint. One window, two windows. Waiting a second. Depending on the picture that you're making, you may need to literally turn the sheet sideways or upside down to do what you need to do. Because remember, because we're on a 45-degree angle here, it's going to be drier up here than it is down there because the water is going like that. Hello, Renee. So I'm going to get some of that lavender, very stiff, almost right out of the tube. And I'm going to push on the side there for those, that lovely blue, that impossible blue that shutters in France have. I don't know what they do. I think it's a darker blue to start with, and then the sun fades it out to this glorious color that just looks so good with that stone. Now, this third stage of the thing, the glisten, you know you're in this stage when the glisten goes off. So I'm looking at this area right here, and I'm seeing the glisten is going off, so I can get some stiffer paint with a brush more like this. And I'm going to perhaps do the darker greens, maybe a little bit of neutral tint. See, that's very slow. It's not moving at all. I'm going to start touching in here the shaded bits. In these brighter greens. So just always remind yourself, if there's water there, or the surface is damp, the paper needs to be a stiffer consistency of paint. Slower moving, that sort of thing. And this brush, it's breaking up and giving me some nice irregular shapes. It's kind of sort of dry down here. All right, now a little more blue in that, a little more red. I'm going to try and go for the cast shadows from the herbs there. Oh my goodness, there's some darks under there too. Yeah, you know what? I could go with a little more liquid paint actually, because the bottom here is drying up. Maybe it's because it's fall and the air is drier. I know I wake up with a dry nose at night. Now up here, we got to get some stronger greens. Oh, that, watercolor in general, you have to be so mindful of where you're at and what you're doing and where you've just painted and the surfaces did this or the surface did that, and you have to be mindful of it. You don't get to, it's not like the oils. We can't just stick something on there and forget about it. Come back and play with it later. We got to be mindful of what we've been doing. And that's good for us, particularly us old folks. Because we need to have our brains challenged from time to time. And the thing that blew my mind about Provence was the way things were growing out of nowhere in the driest, most unhospitable looking soil you've ever seen in your life. I mean, you come from Iowa and you see that black dirt we have, and then you go out there and you see that stuff that looks like, my goodness, looks like a gravel road, and they're growing stuff in it, and it's good. I don't know how they do it. It's a miracle. Now back here, I got some strong darks. I'm going to get some neutral tint and a little bit of alizarin. Because I'm seeing a purplish aubergine sort of dark. I'm going to try and pop in these alcoves here. This one comes down nicely. And there was like a, what do you call it? You could walk around the whole area, and it was absolutely, I'm sure Van Gogh, it helped. Poor guy. So as it starts to dry, the surface starts to dry, you can begin to get in your more specific marks. That tile roof. Okay. Now there's some important business going on over here. Maybe not that dark. Let's get some lavender in that. These are definitely all slow-moving colors. I'm hoping I can pull this off. Oh my goodness. I tell you, I like this approach. I really do. I need to play with it more because it has potential. It opens you up to some subjects that you may not usually get to. Okay, that might have been premature. Okay, so if you see something and it's, too dark, blot your brush, take that damp brush to it, and soften it. Now in here, I'm seeing more orangey sienna. Warm colors. I just want a little more warmth in there. Because that will pull this area ahead of that area. It's very important when you're trying to render a situation like this, that you get this area flat and that area like this. You don't want it to look like two of these. So thank you, Michael. I'm going to keep playing with this, and let's get a little of that in there. Now there is this is the capital from a colonnade that is on, I'm standing underneath the opposite area of this. So I'm going to try to suggest that coming in up here. It doesn't really give you enough to indicate what it is, but it does create a kind of important, I don't know, anchors that corner somehow. I want some strong greens here in the tarragon. Oh, you know what? Let's try this. Let's get this a little moisture with a damp brush. And then get this green. Yeah, there we go. That looks a little more organic. These were some sort of like, I don't know. I don't know my plants. But somebody who works there sure does. And it was just lovely stuff. It was a healing feeling place. Let's put a little turquoise in there. Maybe not that much turquoise. Let's put a little bit of that up here. Okay, we're slowly getting there, slowly getting there. This is a little bit light, I think. Maybe this needs to have some reddishness introduced into it. I think I need a little bit more green definition in this foliage out here. Here where it's in the light, it's receiving quite a bit of back here it's darker. Again, see that paint is not moving very fast. Barely at all. Looking for the shapes. For important shapes. Kind of coalesces the darks. All right. Yellow. Now what you can't see is the paint that I'm dipping into is pretty much nearly tube strength, so it's pretty creamy. Do need some stronger darks in here, don't I? So I'm mindful of the fact that I've just painted there relatively recently. So when I bring in a new color, it has to be pretty thick. Can't be runny. Up in here, I think I need to get a little darker. The siennas, the ultramarine. The right side of this is darker than the left side of it. And the bottoms of it is a little darker than the upper parts of it. The windows I need to go darker on. And that's not the color. It's a grayish greenish color. Okay, slowly, slowly. Let's get some cobalt or some cerulean. Down through here, there's a bit of a cast shadow coming from this facade onto that facade. So I'm going to try and suggest that. There's a bit of a shadow coming from this thing. And then there's some slightly specific shadows from this. I'm betting it was some kind of salvia of some sort. They should be about the same height, shouldn't they? Something warmish, meaning sienna or brownish. There's a, there. Let's warm this up. Warm this up. Lavender, burnt sienna, heavier on the burnt sienna. Inside the arch. Okay. You really have to take this kind of painting on the fly. You have to look what's happening and try and let it be what it's developing into. Trying to get that there. Maybe a little, couple of, it's very dry down here. It's drying up quite a bit. The places that are wet are the places where I've just been painting. So the moisture is, we're very quickly moving from situation 3 to situation 1, except where I've been painting, I'm turning it into situation number 2. So I want to go with the aubergine dark again, meaning a red plus the neutral tint. I might do 2 of those, but not 3 of those. Back to the dark greens again. I think I want to, well, this feels kind of dry. So I'm going to take a smallish brush, like so, nylon that's kind of stiff. I'm going to, see it makes that footprint, dry brush. I'm going to try to introduce some of this weathered quality to the stucco. I do need to get at some of this dark that I used there. I'm going to try and define that roof line a little better. That a little better. Maybe one side, but not both sides. There's a architectural feature in here. Just need to darken that up, and also in there. We're getting there. It's not as oh, that's too dark. So what do? Rinse. Blot the brush. Pull it down. So I'm going to try and get some pure Holbein lavender there. So let's let this dry. In fact, no. Let's think about that. Once it's dry, then we're out of this ballpark. So I'm going to splatter a little bit of green into the greenery to try and get that to look right. Let's see, maybe up here if I'm careful. Well, the safer thing would be to do that. Okay, now, while it's somewhat damp, I think I want to take more of that aubergine mix, which I'm doing with quinacridone and neutral tint. Top portions of the windows. Maybe whatever's going on over there. There's this vine that was coming out and up into this giant tree or foliage, and it was just coming out of a little hole in the ground. It's crazy. I don't know how they do it. Let's get some of the lavender, that plus some of the lavender to make the cast shadows of that. Okay, the more I play with this, the worse it will get. So, upper portions of the window darkened, but not the lower portions. I think I want to lift a little bit. I wished I got that area a bit more yellow ochre, but I want to lift a little bit for this area in here. So this is a damp brush that I can take paint off with. And it's just so I rinse the brush, get most of the water off. It's a stiffer brush. I might try to lift some architectural details there. There's a, who knows what that is? Looks like a big scallop. And let's see, how about the sill below the window? Now, the reason it lifts so good is because that third condition of the paper, you remember I mentioned that the water's below the surface, the pigment is not quite yet dry. So when you lift it, it will lift easily, and because the water is below the surface, it will not run back in and fuzz out again. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages to this, and boy, I think I'm going to have to explore it some more. So do I want to make, yeah, I do want to make this. It's fairly dry down there. It's hard for me to communicate that to you perfectly, but I'm going to take I just want to make that a little bit darker than it is now. And possibly I want to make this area up here a little darker than it is now too. Particularly on the upper side. So let's peel this off and see what we get. Now, it will, because the paper is soaked, when you put tape on it, you may pull up some of the fibers. So if it starts to do that, let it get dry and then try to take your tape off. if push comes to shove, warm the tape with a hair dryer, and that will loosen the adhesive. And usually that will help. I wish that I got a little redder up there. I think it just, in terms of the color, it would have been nice. So it's still damp enough that it's adhering to the board on its own. So I'm going to put the piece of tape up there just for the heck of it. Then I'm going to fully dry it, and then I might do some dry brush marks. Whoops. Okay, so what do I want to add? Well, I can see, I really wish, like I said, I wished I had gotten that a little more warm and ochreish. So I might try a glaze in here. And I think I like that better. I might put a bit of that in here too. Warm reflected light, and I might go, rather than ochre, with some sienna over there, and just a little bit in here. Maybe some more dry brush blue-green on the foreground portions of this, whatever it is. I want to try and make it look a little different than the yellow greens up here, but I need some of that up here too, I think. Okay, so, well, thank you, Becky. This is where I would, ooh, I see what it's something I can do. Make that area separate from whatever that little scallop, it looks like a bay scallop or something. Okay. Darker green coming out to here. There are some little red flowers in there, but that's, I would need like a nice opaque pinkish red to accomplish that. I'm going to try, this may work, it may not work, to put a little bit of red-orange glaze. Hi, Susie. Great costume. There's a, somewhere in San Francisco, there is a exhibit of Bertha Morisot and Manet, because apparently they had some sort of ill-fated relationship or something. She was married to his brother. But they've got both of their paintings in this exhibit. It's in San Francisco now, and it's going to Cleveland in the spring. But they do have that picture that your costume was done from. So, to review, this idea of wetting the paper, remember to draw first on the dry paper before you wet it. Moisten the back, moisten the front, roll the paper towels across it to get most of the moisture off the top. Then remember that what you've done is you basically created this situation without any paint. And as you apply paint, you want to remember to use a thicker consistency of paint, and you will be creating this situation most of the places you're working. Another thing that's important to remember when you're painting a watercolor is that the entire surface is not uniformly the same paper condition. You can have on the same sheet of paper this, and this condition all going on at once. If you've been painting somewhere, there's a lot of water on the surface. If you've not been painting there, it's probably soaked in. If you haven't painted there in quite a while, may already be dry. So always be mindful of what's going on the surface of your paper. And remember, if I've painted there, I need to bring something a little bit thicker. So thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to play around with this a lot more. I really like what can be done with it. Look up Andy Evenson. Definitely look up Trevor Chamberlain, British painter. Andy Evenson he's a Trevor Chamberlain disciple, and just a beautiful, beautiful work by these guys using this kind of technique. So, thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane, pray for America. Peace out.